Welcome to the Adjunct CEO Podcast with your host, the Adjunct CEO, Dean Akers. Tips, ideas, and interviews with top leaders to help you and your business when results matter.
Thanks for joining me today. We should have a pretty cool show today. It's a little bit off topic, but I like doing shows based on what I run into in the course of a week or course of a couple days. This show is kind of near and dear to my heart because I get into this debate so often, and the show's about the value and what I think about the millennial generation. I'm 66 this year. I was born in 1952. And I get all these conversations from friends of mine about, wow, the millennials, they're just not as engaged. You know, how do you get them to work? They're entitled. They've been given everything. You know, they didn't do it like us. And I got to tell you, I am no question, I am the biggest advocate for the millennial generation. I love the millennial generation. Not only do I love the generation, I think it's going to be an epic generation for our country. I think it's going to be an epic generation for development and opportunity. And I'm more excited about the millennials than you can ever imagine. So today I'd like to just talk a little bit on the show about how I feel that way and why my data is just not anecdotal. First off, I get to visit with a lot of my generation, baby boomers, people my age, and I get a chuckle when they go, Dean, you know, they just aren't as committed as we are. They just, you know, today's 22, 25-year-old, they're just not, you know, they're not focused like we are. And I look at them and I go, what are you talking about? And they go, well, what do you mean? I go, how can you sit there and say that about the 25, 20-year-old, 30-year-old folks when you don't reflect back in the mirror at us? And they look at me like I'm crazy. So then these are some stories I want to share with you today because I think they'll paint the picture. And I hope they get all the listeners out there as excited about this generation that, quite frankly, is going to take care of me and a lot of us out there and understand my framework for sharing this thought process and you understanding and putting it into your own context to see how you feel about what I'm sharing. So I'm talking to a group of folks in my age group, and I got to speak to this group about a year ago, and the group was on how transformative and great the millennial generation is, especially for us baby boomers. And so I opened the thing with a dialogue because I asked the question, do you think they're as engaged as we were or more engaged or work harder? And they all go, no, man, they don't work near as hard as we did. And I said, well, actually they do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make an argument that the millennial generation today is more engaged than ever and engaged on all fronts. And I'll give you a class example. So I met with this group of my baby boomer buddies and slash people. I was speaking to a fairly large group of baby boomer executives. And I asked them this question. Let's roll the clock back. Let's roll the clock back to about 1976, 77, 78, when I was in my mid-20s. So I'm in my mid-20s, and I decide I want to meet with one of my friends, and it's a Friday in the evening, and I want to go out with them tomorrow morning fishing. So I walk over to this device that's hanging on my wall. I pick up a receiver and listen for a dial tone. For some of you listeners out there, you probably think I'm speaking about some prehistoric something or other, but we called this our telephone. I then dialed the dial by a rotating dial that would go pop, 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 pop. And I dialed the numbers, and at the other end, somebody blissfully answered and said, hello. And I said, hey, Bill, this is Dean. Hey, Dean, how are you? I said, great. What are you doing tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know, you want to do something? Yeah, let's go fishing. So we would meet at the fishing or the boat ramp the next morning at 7 o'clock. We got there. We put our rods and reels in the boat. We backed the boat in the water, parked the car, and took off for a day of fishing out on our local bays here. During that day, we laughed. We talked about things coming up. Back in that age, we probably talked about our bosses and how tough everything was at our age and how nobody understood us and how they thought we were entitled, and maybe we were. We certainly didn't feel that way. And while we were out there, we caught some fish and had a big time. And we came back, loaded the boat up, and went home. Now, here's the question I ask the listeners out there, especially if you're in my age, especially if you move the clock back into the late 70s when we were in our mid-20s. We're on that boat. We're fishing. We're laughing. We're having a big time. The weather's gorgeous. Who could get a hold of us? Who could get a hold of us? Well, the answer's no one. No one could get a hold of us. Even then, we didn't have ship-to-shore radios. They were too expensive. So we were just out on the bay, fishing, having a big time all day. No distractions other than maybe a dolphin or something jumping on the horizon or an airplane flying over, but just having a big time. Came back, piled our boat on the trailer and went home. Easy peasy. Now let's roll the clock forward today. First off, if I decided I want to go fishing, or if I'm a millennial and I'm one of my sons, and I have 5 millennial sons I'm very proud of, I'm going to text them. And I'm going to text them at whatever time. And generally within 10 or 15 minutes, I'll get a text back. And I'll say, do you want to go out fishing tomorrow? And they'll go, yes. And we'll say, I'll meet you at the ramp. So we meet at the ramp. We get on the boat. We're out in the bay. And now I want to text one of my millennial associates because we're out talking about something. I said, man, that's curious. I'll ask them. So I'll text them at 10:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning. Hey, do you remember this? What about this? About 15 minutes later, ding, my phone beeps. And it's my millennial associate texting me back on a Saturday morning at 10:30 with an answer. And I have the answer. And I said, so let's think back. 70s, nobody could get in touch with me. And I didn't do anything but work that 8 to 5. And oh yeah, I worked some long hours sometimes. But I had freedoms of being connected. Today's generation of millennial workers are connected 24/7. And the thing about it is understanding how they work and why they work and kind of how engaged they really are, and they work for purpose. When you have an engaged millennial force, they're working 24/7. They have their phones with them. If they see something interesting about your business, they're taking a snapshot with their phone and texting it to you and saying, look, I just saw this product. It's something we ought to talk about next week. They're 24/7 on. They're 24/7 on. And they love the work environment. They love to work with purpose. Now, what they don't like is an autocratic boss. They want to work with purpose. So I would suggest to you that the millennial workforce is going to be or is awesome. I would say their work process is way different than we were. And I would also suggest that their work process is more efficient than we were. And as a matter of fact, they do work this 24/7, 365. In fact, occasionally I'll hear one of them go, man, I'm working all the time. Now, we'll sit there and say, they're not working hard because they didn't get to the office till 8:15 and we open at 8. And my question is, what happened between 8 and 8:15? Probably nothing. What were they doing at 8:15 or 8? At 8 o'clock, they might have been sitting at coffee with somebody texting your biggest customer the answer they asked at 7:30 when you normally would have been closed 30 years ago. So the reason I wanted to share this on the show today, if there's any millennials out there that agree with me, I want you to hit me up at help at adjunctceo.com, help at adjunctceo.com, and give me some feedback. I also would really like to do a presentation sometime in the Tampa Bay area here in the next month or two with millennials. So if you're hearing this and you're millennial and you want to get together, let's find us a common place. I'll rent a room or something, and let's really brainstorm this, because I really believe that the generation is awesome. I think that the generation is accountable. I think that the generation, first off, from a demographic standpoint, is going to be the longest sustaining growth generation that we've had, even bigger than the baby boomers. So it's going to drive our economy like crazy. And I think it's time that we kind of own up to the fact of the differences between the two and start embracing those differences and helping grow out our millennial leaders to the future. And I'm certainly willing to, if I get any questions, comments, just go to help at adjunctceo.com, help at adjunctceo.com, and leave me your comments. And I just kind of want to leave you with this, is if you have millennials in your workplace, understand that they're a huge asset. Understand they want to be heard. Understand that they have great deal of passion for purpose. And your job, if you're in the C-suite or you're the manager of your small business or you're in sales or whatever, and you're a baby boomer like myself or even a Gen Xer, is to understand those skills and those emotions and those great things that the millennial generation has, and learn how to use that and learn how to harness that energy. And I'm reminded of a story that I'd like to kind of close out on, and it's a story of an atom. And an atom, if split the wrong way, will blow up the earth. An atom split the right way will power electricity to tens of thousands and millions of people. I believe that we, especially the baby boomer generation, need to focus on splitting the atom the right way. We need to focus on our great millennial generation and helping them be more of themselves, helping them take their work ethic, which is awesome, and exploring how to make it fit in with what we thought the work ethic is, and grow out this great generation so that one day they can take care of us. Have a great time this week. And again, I want to personally put a shout out to all the millennials, and I really want to hear from you at help at adjunctceo.com. You guys and girls rock.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. If you have any questions or need some help, just email help at adjunctceo.com. Thanks for tuning in.